And I mean, he had to deal with not just the military side of things, he was the guy who had to deal with the political side of things. And he had to deal with the biggest crybabies of World War II. So you got Charles de Gaulle, of course, Henry, Henry II is a crybaby, Darlene afterwards. I think Darlene was probably the
For
least.
a bit.
Yeah.
Henry Giraud.
Henry Gerald is the biggest cry. I don't know. Charles de Gaulle and Henry are like together big, big crybabies. The British too. We have a lot of British figures. We're all Montgomery, for example. He had to
Uh,
deal with Patton, who was a loose cannon. You know, he had a lot.
but I'll say one thing. He fostered an environment of collaboration between the Western Allied Command that pretty much mostly worked. Sure,
Yeah.
you had like figure like Montgomery and Patton. You always got to have it, but he was able to get them to work. And the reason, one reason he and Arthur Tedder were actually like made the number one and number two of the supreme headquarters of the Allied Expeditionary Forces commanders. So they're the number one and number two. Was these guys, they understood logistics, they understood working together, they understood what is the amount of prep needed, and they did not really have any big nation bias or service bias. They did what
Definitely.
was needed. And I think one great thing of Eisenhower is when needed, he knew to make the right decision.
Yeah.
For example, targeting the French infrastructure in the build up to Overlord was something that the British were against.
He took a lot
But
of
he
heat
said,
from Churchill for that one. Yeah.
yeah, but he insisted that it was
Mm.
needed so that until we mass our forces in Normandy, this will slow down the panzers.
Yeah. And he was absolutely
It was
right.
the
Yeah.
correct move.
Yeah. It was a hard
His
decision, and
broad,
he made hard decisions a lot. Yeah.
yeah, and even in command, like people wanted Patton gone after the mid 1943. He kept him. Patton did well in the liberation of Western France. And
Yeah.
during the Battle of the Bulge,
Yeah.
his decision to keep Patton in the front lines really would pay off, even
Mhm.
when Bradley did not believe the severity of the initial attack.
Yeah. And I can't think of anybody that could have helped ferment the coalition between the Americans, British, French, and other allied forces other than Eisenhower. The fact that Eisenhower would become president of the United States, I think says a lot about his character. And I think he was just such a great leadership figure that there wasn't anybody else that could have filled those shoes. Like Marshall, for example, I do think it was a good choice that Eisenhower was the one who would actually fill those shoes in the end. Other than that, I
Uh,
think the
I
criticisms
think,
against him are minimal.
well, it's just only Montgomery who's one of his biggest critics, and that's because
Yeah.
Montgomery wanted to go for Berlin, and Eisenhower forbade it and wanted to continue the broad front approach. And I'm pretty sure he would have had some scathing remarks for Montgomery for Market Garden, to say the least.
Yeah, for sure.
But Eisenhower already knew that since the political leaders had promised Berlin to the Soviets, there's no point even trying to expend resources of men and material to go on to Berlin like Montgomery wanted. Not that
Yeah.
Montgomery would have gotten there in any record time.
And I want to talk more so about the worst figure because I actually detest this guy. So, I think this isn't a surprise to American audiences, World War II history, because this guy's infamous, but it's General Lloyd Fredendall, who, of course, was the guy that oversaw the Kasserine Pass disaster. But I'm going to kind of dig a little bit more into things aside from that. You know, he came to North Africa with no direct combat experience because he was not just recommended by George Marshall. George Marshall gave him his entire career. This guy was like riding this guy's coattail the whole time, and he did not deserve the position he was put in. He was a rampant Anglophobe and a Francophobe, not unusual, honestly, for the time period. And this led all the British and French commanders to really hate him, which doesn't help him in, any means. He refused to use military terminology. To give you an example, he would call infantrymen walking boys and artillery pop guns. He would refuse to use the standardized military grid system when he would relay orders, and he would instead just kind of make up these bizarre orders. And I even have a quote here. He would tell someone like, "Have your boss report to the French gentleman whose name begins with a J at the place who begins with a D, which is 5 grid squares left of M." That's a direct quote of one of his orders. This guy
I'm pretty
was,
sure if it's a new officer, he'll be like, what the
yeah.
hell?
I have another quote here. He told this one guy, "You're going to be targeting this location at the place that begins with C." So it's like maybe he couldn't read a map. I don't know, but that's like so unprofessional, and it's actually absurd to hear this kind of shit was going on. He was a distinguished graduate of like a great school, but again, it's like he was in the know, and he had a lot of big friends that were just kind of propping him up. He didn't follow procedures. He didn't even do like proper things when he was like saluting men and stuff. Also, when he finally took command and he during the North Africa campaign, he had this exquisite bunker made that he hid in, and I guess he took offense to the fact that Eisenhower was gifted a bulletproof Cadillac when he had landed. And all of a sudden, Fredendall, like, he demanded that he would get one too for some reason. And he, like, this was a top priority for him. This is something that a lot of people criticized him for. Um, Bradley was there. He said that, like, the fact that this guy hid in his bunker was a complete embarrassment to every American soldier present. It was very cowardly. What else to say about him? He never visited the front lines, clearly because he was at the bunker, spent his whole time there. He fought most of the time for that bulletproof Cadillac. I think one of the most egregious things he did is, for those who know about the Battle of Casterman Pass, he just spread the units thinly and he put his armor in piecemeal. He didn't even have mobile reserves to like deal with any of the breaches against frickin' Rommel. Like, it just is outstanding to think that the way the guy went about the Casteran Pass. And after the debacle begins and the casualties are mounting, Eisenhower sends General Ernest Harmon to go stabilize the situation and to see what was going on with Fredendall. And apparently, Harmon said he simply walked up to him. Fredendall told him, "The party is yours," and he went to bed. So
Mm.
I don't know what else to say there. This guy,
I think that's the second worst handover of command, if you will, than what Joseph Stilwell did when he was relieved from his position in China.
true. That's true.